Whose turn is it anyway? A podcast about board gaming with our gaming group. I'm Becky, and I'm taking the first player token from James, or Davey as we call him, for the next 4 episodes. Today our main topic is cooperative gaming, which sort of follows on nicely from the last episode about dungeon crawlers. I'm joined at the table today by Tambo,
Hello.
Adrian,
Hello.
and Rob.
Yo.
How is everyone today?
Yeah, good. Thanks.
Good.
Really well.
Cool, well, let's get straight into it then, and let's talk about Hex, where we chat about the games we've managed to get to the table lately. Tambo, if you want to start us
I'll
off.
start. Yep. Over the weekend, I played a family game called Codenames. So yeah, it was good fun. It's a party game more than a family game, actually, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was introduced this by you, Becky. Yeah,
It's a good
through
game.
the 24-hour board game marathon, and yeah, so I went out and bought it, and the family love it. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Bit of a description of it. It's I don't know how you say it. You're trying to get the spy out.
Yeah, it's kind of like a word association, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sort of, but kind of in little teams versus the other team.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so you have one person who's trying to get the grid mark, isn't it? Five grids, 6 grids, I think. A section of a 5 by 5 grid of words on the table, and you're only allowed to say one word, aren't you?
Yes.
So the spy can only say one word, and out of that he says, for example, car for 2, and the other teammate's got to guess what you're thinking on the 5 by 5 grid names, and if you get it right, you get it right. If you get it on, don't, you can pass.
There's only one card that can stop the game, isn't there?
Yeah,
but
right.
It makes me realise how... So I would have thought that me and my husband would have been really good at this. It turns out it's the opposite. So you've got to be on the same kind of wavelength as your other team members, but you can be thinking about things very differently, I've found.
Yeah, but we were quite on a good team. With my nephew, we had a good wavelength, so we were good.
Good.
Yeah.
We played this after we had our first Christmas night out. We went back to Big Chris's house.
Big Chris.
We were all quite drunk by this point, so it probably wasn't the best game to play because none of us were on any kind of wavelength that was similar to the other person. Great game though, lots of fun.
Yeah,
lots of fun.
There is a few different versions, isn't there? So that you've got Codename Duet. Now I haven't played that one, but
it's a green box, isn't it?
But it's just for 2 players, so I don't really know how that changes. And I was looking at early today, funnily enough, Harry Potter Codenames.
Oh.
And I think that is more like Codenames Duet. So it had pictures on it, which confused me.
Yeah, there's a Codename Pictures version as well.
Ah.
So there are a few different ones out there.
I see. Yeah, but it's a good, easy to understand, but not maybe quite as easy to play.
Indeed.
I don't think.
Is it anything Harry Potter related, and you're quite tempted by it?
Well, I was interested to look, but I don't think on reflection I want to buy
Fair
it.
enough.
So
piqued your interest. At least.
It did, yeah. It reeled me in a little bit, and then that's right. Adrian, how about you?
So the lovely Paul Grogan invited me over to play some games with him last week sometime, and he ended up bringing out a new game called Sabika, which was really interesting. It's a Euro game. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Gugong,
Okay.
but basically what you've got 3 rondels, so 3 sort of circles that you put your workers around. They're only allowed to move so many spaces, and moving more spaces costs you more resource. And if you land on the same space that someone else is on, it also costs you more resource. And there's 3 separate ones, and each rondel has got like a specific reason. So the outside is building Sabika is I think it's a temple. I think it might be a mosque. I'm not quite sure, but it's a sort of a very elaborate building in Spain that was built in the Granada region, I think it is. And you're representing building that. So the outside rondel is you're building the building itself. The sort of inside one is sort of more trade and dealing with sort of local merchants and merchants in Africa and stuff like that. And then the inside one is about creating poems and artwork to go on the inside of this building. And essentially, you're just moving your workers around, and then kind of like Gugong, you've kind of got lots of little mini bits and pieces that you're trying to do. So everything gives you a little bit of victory points, but the inside one's getting you some poems, and you can kind of build a little engine around getting more points for more poems, or the outside one, let's say, is around building. So you can sort of get it so that the more you build, like you build a slightly better engine for building. And it's really interesting. Certainly one to keep an eye out on. Sad, I don't think it's been released yet, but really interesting game to play, and definitely a strong Euro that I think will fit in a lot of people's collections.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah,
It was really good.
That
It was
good.
It was really good. It was a different puzzle. I've played rondel games before. I mean, ultimately, Great Western Trail is essentially a rondel sort of game, but yeah, it was totally different. To be fair, the rondel thing looks really complicated in the middle of the board, but it's not. While you're learning it, you can't kind of see the interconnections I found as quickly as some other games I've seen. But once you sort of 2-3 turns in, there's only like 7 turns. But once you're 2 or 3 turns in of the first game, you kind of see how all the pieces lock together. And I'm really interested to see if I can get a second play of it.
With board games, what I found is the weirder the premise, the better the game.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if you try selling that to somebody who doesn't play board games, they're going to look at you like you're mental.
Yeah, maybe.
But like when JP talked to me about viticulture,
Yeah.
I was like, no, I don't care how good a game it is. I am not playing a board game about making wine. I'd rather be drinking it, I'll be honest with you. But everyone talks about how good a game that is, to the point now where I'm thinking, I might need to play it.
It's good.
It is good.
But
It is good.
if you tried selling that premise to somebody,
Oh, yeah.
it sounds mental.
There's a worse one. There is a worse one for that, and that is Magic Maze on Mars. That
Yeah, that's a
sounds
weird
ridiculous,
premise.
but from having
It sounds like you've sold the game in a really interesting way that I'm like, well, that sounds amazing.
Again, like viticulture, if you like your sort of mid-weight Euros, I think, yeah, most people would be worth giving it a try. I don't think there's much to dislike in this game. It may not be your favourite of all time. I certainly think it would sort of break into my sort of top 20 games potentially after a few plays.
wow, that is high praise.
Yeah, it may not break people's top 20 like that or anything, but there is a game in there that's really solid, and I think it'd be interesting to see how it stood up after a few more plays. But yeah, regarding the whole sort of these are weird and wonderful, I've had this conversation is if you go back far enough, like you get into really like what I'd call classic geeky tropes, where it's like we are dungeon delving with elves and dwarves, or we're building castles, or we're exporting to the Mediterranean, which are just the real classic like board game tropes. And the more modern you get, you're like, we're collecting birds, or we're taking dogs for a walk, or we're making wine. And you're like, if you tried to explain to, like, if you took someone like a nerd from the 90s, if you like, and brought them into modern day, they'd probably be looking really lost.
Yeah, none of it
all
would
these
make
random
sense.
board games. But yeah,
You
it's
said
good.
you made it sound amazing,
Yeah.
so
What's,
give it a go.
what's the is it like in its beta phase, or is it the
No,
actual?
it's pretty much there.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it is there. So
What's the component quality like, and what kind of is it pretty? Is basically what
yeah, you've got wooden components and some cardboard ones, but the cardboard makes sense because it goes in a bag and you draw it out randomly, so it makes sense for it to be, even if it was wood, it'd have to be like printed discs or something like that. And you've got different size meeples, which are purely just to tell you which rondel they go on. So the biggest workers go on the outside, and it looks visually correct because obviously the chunks on the outside rondel are going to be bigger than they are on the inside, and then the smallest workers are there. And there's some nice, like they've got I think it's stained glass or something like that, which was like just a little see-through blue acrylic, but kind of added to it. And all the board was massive, to be fair, for what it was. Like you'd need a decent, or you'd need a regular sized board game table at least to play it on, but it meant that all of the components were a decent size. There was some very tiny writing on some of those cards because they were trying to pack in a lot of writing into a small card. But other than that, it looked impressive. It looked big, like I say, it was chunky sort of cardboard and everything. So that's good.
Cool. Awesome. Rob, how about you?
I only managed to get one game to the table, which was Marvel Champions. So a bit of one that we've I think the majority of us have played in the gaming group.
But not me.
Oh,
but you were just saying how good it was. So
I think you'd enjoy it, Becky.
Yeah.
I really do. It's the complexity of the game comes from the deck that you build.
Yep.
And the character that you are and the class that you are, because you choose what aspect you want to be.
And this is why you can buy lots of upgrades and add-ons.
Yeah, pretty much.
Characters, yeah.
That's one reason you could. The other reason is that we're all greedy bastards. We quite like collecting them.
Yeah, it's not just about the play, is it? It's about the collect and about the acquiring.
So no, we managed to get that, and we had a really good game. It was good fun.
Got to ask who's the villain.
Who was it? I can't remember now.
Oh, come on.
You killed him. So
It was Ultron. No, but because I played as Hawkeye,
with his explosive arrows.
no leadership.
But you've got explosive arrows, so it does 3 damage to everything engaged with you.
You've got Squirrel Girl.
Oh, you have got Squirrel
So
Girl.
every time you get an ally out, they usually have special abilities.
Right, okay.
Squirrel Girl's ability is she does 1 damage to every enemy on the board. Ultron's thing is that he pulls out loads of drones.
Which have got 1 damage each.
Ah.
So Squirrel Girl is like anti-Ultron.
I see.
Sounds mental.
Yeah.
But she worked very well. And with the leadership deck, there's a card where you can get allies that you've used out of your discard pile.
Okay.
So you just kept playing her, and it worked really well. And to be honest, it's the first time I've ever beaten Ultron. So
I always know Ultron. It's a time. You don't want to put one as third phase, otherwise it's timer, isn't it?
Well, the third.
You can't remove threat from the third.
Yeah, the third.
So if you put one in the third part of this,
the campaign scenario part.
Yeah. So it kind of works like a story. So the villain that you're fighting has 2 different phases.
Depends. It can be 1, 2, or 3. Yeah.
And nastier stuff happens the further they get because they're trying to get to a goal.
Oh, okay.
So the more stages that are flipped over, the closer they are to their goal. So
you put threat tokens on them. When it hits a threat number, it'll flip.
Yes.
So essentially,
it's a way of keeping the game ticking over.
For Ultron, in the first phase, it's basically like him hidden away, trying to do his little scheming in the background.
Okay.
And then in the second phase, it's all about him storming the building. So he's creating more drones. And in the third phase, he's like going to take over the world or whatever. Yeah. So in which case you can't take threat back off because he's so well developed that you are literally have the last few seconds to defeat him before he goes.
So it's get it in early.
So, and pretty much every villain has a similar sort of story. Like some of them are a bit like, this is just don't get to this much threat. But for the most part, you can see the story they're trying to tell in it.
Good. But yeah, really good fun.
Yeah, I love.
And it was a good game. Thing is, you play it once, you know how to play it. So, like I say, it's different every time because of the different characters that you play, the different aspects that you play, and even the combination of the aspects that other people are playing works very well, and that changes as well.
So do you pick the bad guy that you're fighting against, or is it a random?
You can do, but there is a campaign scenario where you defeat one boss and it leads to a next one. But no, we just picked a random.
A random.
And smashed them up, which is quite nice.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's always good when you win.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we'll mention later about sort of co-op games. It's nice when you win, but if something's going to win every time, maybe that's not so good. But
it's not as fun.
I guess we can come on to that. So my latest game we played, which was only a couple of days ago, was Spirit Island. So this whole episode that we're doing today, from my choice, was inspired by Spirit Island. And I have to be honest, this episode of this podcast would have taken a very different turn had I not had this latest game. So we played with Curly, Davey and JP, and it was, like I say, a real pinnacle game for me. Something just clicked, and I think I just I just got it this time. I enjoyed it before, but I've been feeling like I've been really relying on like Curly telling me not what I should do, but me asking his opinion quite a lot more, because it's just something very different than I've ever played, and it is more complex than I had played before.
It is rated highly amongst the complexity amongst co-ops.
But it's the thing that frustrated me was it's very easy to understand what's happening. There's a few phases. It's always like that. The icons are very simple. It's obvious, but having that kind of foresight of what you think this is going to happen in a minute, I couldn't get my head around that. And so I really loved it when I first played it. Oh, it's really lovely pieces. The board's really nice and it's really good. Then I started getting a bit cold, like, why am I not getting this as quickly as I want to? That's really annoying. And I just thought, do you know what? I don't think this is for me. And if it hadn't have been for Curly enjoying it, I would have been putting it on for sale, because I just kind of...
I think that's part of the difference, though, with a co-op game, is the fact that you can lean on other people a little bit. And like you said, if you had never played that game again...
This is it. But this last game was a massive game changer for me. I won't go into it much more because we'll talk about it in depth in a minute in our main segment when we talk about co-op games. So I guess let's crack into it. So, co-op gaming then. Some love them, some hate them. I think we're all fans here, aren't we?
Big fan.
I guess we'll have to play a bit of devil's advocate for the purposes of balance. I think they probably fall into a couple of different categories from my, well, I guess, naive knowledge about it. Got totally cooperative, where you're all joining together to like defeat the enemy, solve the puzzle,
achieve the goal,
achieve the thing, yeah. And then semi-co-op, so often with like a secret traitor mechanic, where you're all working together, but you've got one double-crossing piece of work who is trying to foil everyone's plans and sabotage the mission.
Usually Tambo.
Yeah, Tambo, this is often you, mate. So what are some of our favourites?
Which ones?
Well,
I was going to say it's a long list.
It is, isn't it? So, I mean, Gloomhaven has to be mentioned. I haven't played it, but it is continually on the top 10 list of games, isn't it?
We talked about it a lot on the last podcast.
Yeah.
Which is actually surprising, because for all the episodes we've had, we haven't mentioned Gloomhaven, really.
Not really.
No,
considering
episode 12 was the first time we played it.
How much we all loved it. I think it's kind of the ultimate dungeon crawler.
Yeah. And
the fact that you are a band of people trying to do it.
Yeah.
Do a little bit good, a little bit of bad. You can kind of play it however you want.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's kind of been the biggest one in the last few years, most definitely. Yeah.
I guess, one of my favourites is Mansions of Madness, and I think I probably played this first at yours, Tambo. I think it was probably one of the first times I played in the group, actually.
Right.
Second Ed, that is.
Yeah.
You've played First Ed, haven't you?
Yeah, only a couple of times.
And that's without the app, isn't it?
That's without the app. And you have a DM as well, so you pretty much have a bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
it was good. Very hard. Very, very hard.
Well, second edition's hard enough, isn't it?
It's very punishing. Second edition.
Yeah.
But the thing is, because of the app, you all lose together.
This is it. I mean,
it's not as bad.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
And I think that is one of the benefits of co-ops, isn't it? You are all together. No one ends up feeling like they let the side down necessarily. Or maybe they do. I don't know.
There's like Mansions, one of you dies, and you've got one more round to finish it, otherwise you all die. So you're not, the person who dies isn't hanging around doing nothing.
Yeah.
It's this big co-op.
Yeah.
You have to look after each other in it, otherwise the game's over.
Absolutely. And then I guess the next biggest one that I think of is Pandemic, which I know is one of Adrian's massive favourite games.
Yeah, because you said, like, we've talked a little bit before about quarterbacking or alpha gaming or whatever, and someone leading you through, and I think you said that your first game of Pandemic was quite similar to that.
Yeah, it really was.
And it is one of those games where information is pretty much public. For a lot of the versions of Pandemic, everything is public information, so someone can play the entire game in their own head and kind of, well, you should really go over there. And like I've been guilty of that to some extent, of kind of someone's literally gone the wrong way, and I'm like, we literally lose the game if you make that move, right? Can we just scoot you over that way instead? Like,
and I guess that's the thing, isn't it? It's, do you want to play the game for everyone to have fun, or do you want to play the game because you want to win the thing? Yeah. So I imagine would be very difficult watching someone make a move you absolutely know is going to hugely impact the outcome and not try and stop them doing it.
I think if it's the last couple of turns of the game, I think you probably could be right to go, look, we're this close. Like, if you go over here, we can see the finish line. Yeah. Whereas I've watched games where someone has quarterbacked from turn 1 to turn all but -1.
A lot of that probably depends on who you're around the table with, right?
100%.
It can be.
If you're teaching 3 new players on how to play it, I think you're kind of expected to kind of lean, like, or not take them through it, but almost kind of point out the pitfalls.
Yeah.
Almost. If you're around a table with people that have played it 10 times, then I guess you kind of have to kind of pull back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few sort of ways of looking at that, I suppose. One of my tricks that I developed, because I was very aware, as soon as I got into co-op gaming and really enjoying Pandemic, I was very aware that I was susceptible to that quarterbacking. And one of the things I learned when teaching new players is, well, talk me through your few options that you want to do and why you want to do them.
Yeah.
And then you talk them through, and maybe you might highlight some pitfalls, or actually, that looks really strong as a move, and sort of try and encourage them. And if you do that for 2 or 3 turns, if they're clearly hesitant, like some players, you teach them and they're like, I'm going off over here, I don't care what anyone else thinks. Like, off I go, and you're like, okay, look, this is the first game for everyone, we'll just play it. But you can see some people who are almost hesitant to make the wrong move. And so by going, right, okay, so what do you feel you should be doing here, or what would you like to be doing now?
And that, for me, is why co-op gaming is better.
Yeah.
Because you have that option.
Yeah.
That's why I personally prefer co-op games.
Yeah.
is because you have that option to lean on someone if you're not 100% sure.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you want everyone to have fun.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be the person that cocks that game up for everyone. So sometimes it is better just to ask.
Just to ask
say,
a
look,
question.
I played Pandemic once, and I'm sorry, but we didn't enjoy it because I played it with 2 experienced players.
Yeah.
They were just taking over, and they were just making my moves for me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
And I really did not enjoy it. I thought it's no individuality to that. Because it's thing. But I think you're right, Adrian. If they're more like what you just said,
Yeah.
ask what I wanted to do from what I thought I wanted to do,
Yeah.
and then they explain why you shouldn't. That would be better. But it was more of a, I'm just do this because surely this is going to move this way, or the virus is going to go that way. You need to put your 10 here. You need to put your 10 here, and like, whoa, I haven't even thought about it yet. And then it's going to go over.
I mean, I suppose we've skipped to kind of the middle point here. So for those who've never heard of Pandemic, other than COVID, then the game is essentially 4 different diseases that will spread through a deck. That deck gets shuffled every now and again. The discard pile gets shuffled back onto the top. So you will see those cities again, basically, each time. And you are a group of, there's some that are like medics, there's like... there's someone who moves other people around the board, transporter or something like that, and there's scientists and researchers, all have their individual role. And what they're essentially trying to do is get around the board, clear up all these little cubes that you put down, which are part of the different diseases, and ultimately try and find a cure for all 4 diseases. And when you found a cure, the game is done in a good way. If you have to put too many cubes on the board, or if you run through any of the decks, or if you get too many explosions of where you've let the disease run rife in a place, then you go down a tracker too far, the game is over and you've lost. And I think it's one of those games where I think alpha gaming and quarterbacking can happen in a lot of games, but I think because of that nature of you know what cards you're going to see, there is a much more of a Euro style feel to this than a lot of co-op games can have, because you know what's coming up. You know, if you've kept track of the discard pile, you know the percentages of what next city's coming up, and you can go, right, no, don't go over there. We've already seen that city in the discard pile. Go over here instead.
Yeah.
And, you can think that in your head, but if you've got a new player, saying that really out loud as in, don't go that way. I'd rather lose the game now. Like, when I first started playing co-op games, I probably didn't, but now I'd rather lose a game with a newbie, and sort of, if they weren't sure or anything like that, and have a good game out of it and them understand why they lost or why this did or didn't happen, then shout at them of, why have you gone to Delhi and not Essen?
Yeah, I think that really mirrors mine, and it sounds like Tambo's experience of the first one. I mean, I did buy it at the UKGE, because what game didn't I buy
You
there?
bought them all.
From the,
You collected them
from the
all.
bring and buy sale.
You got confused with games thinking they were Pokemon.
I was having fun.
And that's all that matters.
Yeah, and we did buy Pandemic, and I do want to play it again, but I will absolutely say right at the start, whoever's teaching or whatever, and it'll probably end up being you, Adrian, so I don't need to say it again, do I? But I'd rather lose it in the first 20 minutes and know that I did a stupid thing than someone going, oh, well, this turn should be this turn should... Because it, like you said, Tambo, it just takes all the fun out of it, doesn't it? And
We're in the end to have fun.
This is it. If games aren't fun, why are you playing them?
Even if at the end of the game someone says, like, oh, we lost because of this, did you notice? Or something like that. That's something better than
absolutely
playing an hour of their game for them, from a...
Yeah.
I've only ever played it once, and we played it when we went to London for the expo.
Oh, yeah.
Alexandra Palace, and it was...
You played Rapid Response, though, is that the one? Yeah, that's not Pandemic.
Oh, okay. So I haven't played it. I haven't played it at all.
It's a spin-off.
Yeah.
And it has very little of the original Pandemic DNA in it. Very, very little. So there's a few games. You've got Pandemic. You've got Pandemic Fall of Rome, Pandemic Iberia, which is my favourite. There's a Cthulhu, Mr. Wibbles Pandemic.
Mr.
Wibbles Pandemic. That's actually pretty good. I'm not a big fan of Cthulhu as a thing, but actually I think they did a really good job of putting that in. And then there's another one which I always, Rising Tide, which is about floodplains in Denmark or somewhere and trying to combat that really random thing. But they all have very similar DNA. Whereas you've got the one that's Rapid Response, and you've got another one where you play as the disease that has very little in common, and the Cure, which is a dice chucker, that has very little in common.
So maybe set a night up.
With
Pandemic. I mean,
so...
well, we own it now, so I would be really interested in playing it. It sounds like the thing that we're kind of talking about in common here is that new gamers, it's really good to get them involved in a co-op, because, like you said, you can tackle games that perhaps are a bit more complex than they would normally enjoy.
Yeah.
And that's definitely my experience with Spirit Island. So it is a really complicated game. You've got a lot of different variables. So for anyone who hasn't seen Spirit Island, it's what looks to me like a very beautiful patchwork board of an island with different kind of lands in it. So you've got mountains, wetlands, sand, whatever. And you're basically acting as the spirits of those islands in order to stop the horrible invaders coming in and trying to, make a new life on your lovely island. And there is a lot more interaction involved, which is one of the main reasons why I think co-ops can be really good. Because, like I said, I play for the fun of the game, not for, I need to win this and solve the puzzle. I mean, there's a little bit of that in it, but if that was my main reason to play, I would never be playing games anymore because
you're not alone.
I'm not. Well, it annoys me that the amount of hours I've spent at it, and I'm not seeming to get any better at it with Spirit Island was just fine. I was getting very frustrated with that, and I didn't really want to play it in a group that wasn't just me and my husband because I felt like everyone else would feel like, well, he's just playing her game for her. What's the point? And that's how I felt. I was like, what is the point of me even sitting here? Not that he was taking over because he wasn't at all, but I almost felt like I wasn't doing anything myself, and that's just really miserable, isn't it?
It can
really
be,
miserable.
Yeah, it can be, definitely.
But this game that we played, the four of us, and I haven't ever played it as a 4-player, and it doesn't look. Well, it looks a lot more complicated. Like there's a huge amount more stuff on the board, and you feel like, blimey, we're never going to tackle this. But that's the thing with Spirit Island. It looks nuts for the first few turns.
Yeah.
Then you start to get a bit more of a kind of lead onto getting rid of these nasty invaders. And then you get them all off, and you've got a beautiful island again, and it's really lovely.
And it's all pretty.
And it's all pretty, yeah. But there's a lot of like, oh well, I've got this card, I can make, because I always play the group that make people able to go fast. So you've got fast cards and slow cards. So you have a fast phase, then the invaders have their phase where they build, ravage, explore the island, and then you have your slow powers, which tend to be maybe more global rather than a hit that town particularly. It might be do a certain kind of damage or whatever to an area. And I always play the ones that just do fast powers because then it meant that I didn't have to think about.
Too far in advance.
I didn't have to think, right, well, in a minute the board's going to look like this, so I'll do that. But I didn't. When you play the lightning guys, you don't have to think of that. But one of your powers is you can make everyone else go faster, or you can make someone else go faster if you want to. So that's really handy, and you can be quite a little happy, helpful person. Oh well, I can make your powers, and that's quite nice. But it does involve a lot of chatting, which is really part of the fun. For me, that is kind of the whole part of playing a card game, isn't it? And the interaction can't be minimised with that because it's just great, isn't it?
And if you don't coordinate, I'm guessing your job becomes a hell of a lot harder.
Yeah,
I haven't played it yet.
Well, some of it's
got the Marvel Champions thing of someone will play an aggressive, someone will play defensive, someone will play
so you got your ass
fear or whatever.
Yeah,
and so you kind of can't. You probably could complete the game, but you'd have a much harder time of it if you don't have a nice mix of aspects, which I found is quite often like a common trope of co-op games where you all have your individual powers.
It's almost like classic.
it kind of is, yeah.
Even in like a pandemic or something like that, if you all have things that just take cubes off the board, you're not going to cure the diseases as quickly. And so I found quite a nice thing with this co-op is it does try to quite often divide up what you're doing a bit nicely by giving you specific powers that support a way of completing the game almost.
So do we think that it kind of changes the dynamics of the group when you're playing a co-op? So normally we're kind of a bit cutthroat and take this, take that kind of attitude. Perhaps that's just our group, I don't know.
Only some of the group.
yeah, sure. But it is, I think it can be really nice to change it up sometimes and play a collaborative kind of game. I don't know, or do you guys just prefer
I prefer co-ops. I just generally prefer them, mainly because I feel a lot less pressure.
Yeah, I can understand
it's
that.
a more relaxing thing for me to do, because there is a group of us, we have to achieve this.
Yeah.
Part of it is the game, but part of it is how you all act around the table.
Yeah.
And like the human interaction in the games is what I enjoy the most. That's what I really enjoy. So but you've got that common goal.
Yeah.
And you either win together or you lose together. And if I cock up, then I can blame the others.
That wasn't where I thought that was going.
That's not where I thought it was going.
And I'm okay with that.
How about for you, Adrian, who is someone who is perhaps normally more of a internal thinking, this is my plan, this is my structure. Do you find that difficult when you play with co-ops because you kind of have to accept other people's decisions, or is it quite nice as a just change?
No, because if I don't agree with it, I just do what I was going to do anyway. No, that's not.
And that is one bonus with
But that's
playing
an option.
That is an
option. Which is why it's great.
And
I think it's one of those things where I do enjoy, as I say, I really enjoyed Spirit Island, I've only had one playthrough of it. I really enjoyed it. It was one of the more conversive, if that's a word, but conversational games where I felt like we were talking through our turns a lot more. Co-ops can be kind of anywhere on that scale. I've had co-ops, well, I was about to say I've had co-ops where you pretty much play it silently, but that's Magic Maze on Mars. But I have had games where you play almost that own little game. Even like Marvel Champions, I've played games where like I'm the hit the bad guy deck and they're the keep the threat down deck, and I've literally spoken to them maybe twice about the actual game plan. Otherwise it's just look at all this cool stuff we're doing, and you're playing in your own turn, whereas it can go all the way from sort of that end to I'll probably talk about it a little bit later. There's the only simulation board game I've ever played is U-Boot, which is your World War II German U-boat pilots, basically submarine pilots that are playing an entire game of hunting down ships out in the like English Channel and stuff like that. And like you've got such quick timers that you immediately start and have to develop quick hand for what you're doing, and you're talking so quickly at each other and getting so that you can get through because it's a timed game. Yeah. And it's crazy, but you are literally...
I can see the stress pouring off Rob.
It's not that I'm having Captain Sonar's flashbacks.
It's one of the most stressful games I've ever played.
Yeah.
But it did certainly bring out, right, okay, so we're diving. You've got everything. You've normalised the ballast. You've got the steering down. Okay, brilliant. You're sending the orders. Brilliant. Okay, have we looked at who's tired, who's not? Are we changing, like, ship crew?
Captain Sonar.
I was going to say, it sounds like work. It sounds like doing a job of people management at work, which...
Sounds awful.
But it was really enjoyable. I didn't want to play it too often, I'll be honest with you, and I couldn't imagine teaching too many people it, so it has kind of left itself in my collection. But you can get that whole scale from really just casual chatting to like the U-Boot sort of almost barking orders at each other and making sure you've got everything down to. We played Bandido.
Yes.
Which was can you not put that there? Brilliant. Oh, okay, I can shut that bit off here. Oh, I can and you literally just having that very casual, very light, low-end chat.
Yeah.
But you're talking about other things in between.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the nice things with co-ops is it can lead to that more casual conversation if you pick the right co-op.
Yeah, as long as it's a fully co-op. So I guess that brings us nicely into semi-co-op, especially with sort of hidden enemy kind of things. Although I guess you've got kind of a halfway house of something like perhaps Nemesis, where it is a co-op, and you perhaps might have your own...
It's a single-player game where you have to be nice to
yes,
other people.
I guess, yeah. So
to achieve your nefarious goals.
So you've all got your own sometimes conflicting win conditions, haven't you?
Yes, massively.
I mean, you want to win, but in order to win, you might need to kill someone else or get this particular thing. So I've only played one game of Nemesis and really, really enjoyed it. Thought it was just such an interesting mechanic of it is co-op, and we do kind of have to stick together because if everyone just runs off, it's all going to just go horribly wrong.
Which it always does.
Which it always does, yeah, exactly. Always goes horribly wrong.
It's a very, very good game. There is a fully co-op on it, and I have played that, and I think playing fully co-op is the first game you should play because it's a learning curve. So the easiest way to learn to play Nemesis is just do it fully co-op because you can, you can just talk about everything with the other players. So all the rooms will have different abilities instead of secretly looking at the card on the side thinking, what does this room do? And then you're trying to figure it out. But if you do it fully co-op at the beginning, your first time, you can just say, what does this room do? We can just read it out and then explain it because you can. Because you've all got your own objectives. We've got to do, say there's 4 players, there's 4 objectives, you've got to do all 4 objectives.
Okay.
But you don't all have to survive.
So you can still sacrifice.
Yeah, there could be one. Yeah, you can just stay on the ship and play. As long as one person gets that, you've done it. So it's good fun in that sense. And it always comes close to the wire. the fully co-op part, but the semi-co-op is better.
Yeah.
It's more fun.
I will look forward to playing that again when it, next arrives on the...
I can't deal with the stress of that game. I'll be honest with you. I can't do it.
Have you played it fully co-op?
I've not fully co-op.
You should try it fully co-op.
I've played that game 3 times, and it's a wonderful game. I've never enjoyed losing so much in my life.
Couldn't agree more.
But you enjoy losing because watching other people lose is just as funny. And whether it's bad rolls, whether it's bad sort of noise rolls, whether it's bad attacking rolls, that it's always funny, even when you're doing it. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful game. Yeah. We've talked about it massively.
When you play semi-co-op games, there's always the villain. There's always an extra bit of achievement if you've done it as a villain.
Yeah, I agree.
You won the game and you've done an even better thing.
I agree.
Betrayed everyone, right?
Yes.
It feels good.
I don't normally win when I'm the villain because I'm not very good at it. So even with things like the resistance...
You played a wonderful Amphibian.
Well,
yeah, exactly. Beat us on that.
That is the only time I think I've won as a villain, possibly. I mean, we play the Avalon quite a lot, which is the resistance / Avalon. So you've got the kind of very quick. Is it a party game? Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, perhaps you wouldn't maybe take it to someone's house who didn't understand games very well. It's not like Codenames party game, but it's
you have to play that game with people that you can shout at and still be invited back.
You definitely need to pick your group.
That's right. So I remember my first ever game of Battlestar Galactica. Everyone explained the entire game to me, and I looked at my card and basically went, what does it mean if you're a Cylon? Because I didn't do it deliberately, but all the rules went out of my head, and I was like, I've never played this game before. I don't know what to do. So I was trying to surreptitiously, but I'm not the most discreet person in the world, going. So looking at the card and then kind of going. So if I wanted to unveil as a Cylon, what would I have to do exactly? It was just not. And I think with semi-co-ops, you do run that risk of. If someone is Merlin in Avalon or whatever, or like the demon in Blood on the Clock Tower. So if you're the demon on Blood on the Clock Tower, then you essentially everyone's looking to try and figure out who you are and kill you. If you're the demon and it's your first turn round, you're going to be hopeless because you're not going to know all those intricacies of what's required and all that kind of stuff. And so I do think a downside to semi-co-op in the traitor version of semi-co-op, because there's quite a few different ones, but traitor seems to be the big one that's made the biggest impact on that sort of genre, is if you end up being the traitor and it's your first play out, you might as well just reshuffle the rolls out, because I think a lot of the time some people are going to really struggle, or they'll be outed instantly and be like, you're definitely the traitor.
But with games like Avalon, they're over so quickly, that wouldn't really matter.
But drop Battlestar
Galactica, absolutely.
That was messed up,
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, they say you got to look at your card for 5 seconds. Everyone's got to time it and then you put it down. So so you don't know what's to do. Obviously, not.
But if you don't know what you've got to do, if you only remember half the rules, because it's your first teach of a game that big, then it can absolutely sort of screw with how that game's going to go.
Definitely.
You almost want to be dealing off the bottom to the person who's new or whatever the cards to make sure.
But you could always say, can we reshuffle? Then when you are a Cylon
then
well, he's obviously good. He doesn't want to be a Cylon. So
I think it's just something to be mindful of if you're putting a new person in a semi-co-op traitor environment.
Yeah. So I think if you're doing the teach on a semi-co-op and you've got really, really newbies in the group, you need to be kind of saying things like, so if you were the bad guy, this would be helpful. Yeah. If you were the good guy, this would be helpful.
But then you'd instantly be accused of being the bad guy.
Well, yes, but if you're in our group, you're getting accused of it anyway, aren't you? Because
I quite like the games where there's a chance somebody is a betrayer, saboteur, working against the others.
Dead of Winter game
and saboteur.
Yeah.
I quite like that because some of the games that we've played of both Dead of Winter and Saboteur, we're accusing everybody around the table of being the bad person, and in actuality, nobody's been the bad person.
Because that is one of the big kind of pitfalls and sort of negative things that people say about co-ops, is the fact that a lot of it's just randomness. It all falls down to what event card you get or whatever, and there's no kind of choice. Whereas I think having that hidden traitor kind of, or potential hidden traitor, you can't predict people's sort of moves as well as you would if you knew that. And I think that's a really good.
It does bring another we played Dead of Winter fully co-op, and it wasn't nowhere near as much fun. Fair enough. That whole hidden. I've played it twice when nobody has been the traitor.
Yeah.
But of course, accusations still fly back and
Of
forth,
course.
which is a massive part of the fun of that game.
Yeah. I guess it would be quite difficult perhaps if you were embarking on a new gaming group maybe, or you wanted to play this particular game and you didn't really know many gamers, so you decided to take it to maybe a con or something. Perhaps it's going to be quite difficult playing that game in a big group of people where you don't really want to be.
But if you're still talking to each other afterwards,
Yeah, they're good to go.
They're worth keeping in the gaming
friends
group.
there.
Yeah. Do we need to talk a bit about what Battlestar Galactica is and the reskin of Unfathomable?
we've done
We
it
mention it a
100
lot,
times
don't we?
already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's different cards, you're with different colours on, you're kind of trying to either foil a plan or not.
Pretty much.
But it's good. And, you know, lots
I mean,
of pointing of...
You described pretty much every traitor game going there, but
Yeah. You know, the better you know your friends, the more that you can, you know, add that into the mix.
Or if you get a reputation, and you always be the key.
Yeah. So what I
That's
mean.
another
So
one.
Tambo, tell us what that's like. So you know, if you actually get the Cylon or the hybrid or whatever the bad one is,
You just have to defend yourself all the time, don't you? And then
Or-
you do the
or-
best you can.
Or play the ultimate turn I've ever seen.
Yeah, there is that. But I think I had new player advantage on that one game we played, but it was good.
To this day,
It's not my third game in a group, and
it was the best turn I've ever seen.
yeah, we're talking about Dead of Winter one.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
I haven't played this. What?
It's a really fun
Zombie.
game.
It is good fun.
It's a really fun game. We need to get it to the table. We haven't played it in years.
Yeah, I was going to say.
We need to get that back. But
Another
yeah.
on the list to get back to the table.
Yes, Tambo was the traitor.
Of course he was.
You have to clean the camp.
Right.
Tambo,
Oh, I've heard this story. Yeah, I don't even
I've
know the
heard it,
game,
yeah.
and I've heard this story.
Tambo has the broom. Don't worry, guys. I'll clean the camp. I got this. I can do it in one nice, easy, fail move, done. Got to his turn. Last player. He was like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that now. I'm just going to go over here and do this." And
Even nice, I took the broom off Davey as well, which felt good. Davey
said,
gave me the
"Oh, yeah,
broom.
you did, didn't you?
Yeah,
So
Davey
Davey
gave me the
gave me the
broom.
broom.
Yeah,
and then he just went off and did his and gone, there you go.
And I was last turn on that go, so it's like the last turn. I was like, oh, "Yep, I'll do everything, guys."
There you go. Your camp's an utter mess. You all fail. I win, however, because I have this. It was just the ultimate mic drop move, and I was so angry with him because of how good it was. And it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And we've all been very kind of positive about co-op games. Can we think of anything negative about them?
A lot of it depends on who you're around the table with,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
yeah, we talked about the quarterbacking.
Not even that. I mean,
as well.
but if people aren't willing to play as a team, then that can make the game very difficult, especially when there are classes.
Yeah.
So if somebody is a class and potentially they don't want to be that class, then and they're not doing what that class is meant to do. With Dungeon Delvers, it's probably not the end of the world because you can play those characters a lot how you want to. But as a team element, there are parts of every team, and you have to do your job. Like not specifically that, but primarily.
Yeah.
And especially if it's a game that relies on that, then that can make it quite a difficult experience sometimes.
I played a game of Batman Gotham City Chronicles, which great game, love it. It is very complicated, but it's a great game. And in it, you had to hack some computer points. And there's a punchy person and a hacky person, basically. And the person wanted to be the punchy person. Someone else wanted to be the punchy person. So it's like, right, okay, I'll be. I think it was like old Batman or whatever, who's just likes laying into criminals, basically.
No, who doesn't?
Who doesn't? And the other person was then the person supposed to be hacking all the computers, but they didn't like it, so they went off and punched people for 3 turns, and the game was done basically at that point. And you can get that kind of, but you know what your role is like.
Yeah, and I think most games have a element of, do your role.
Yeah.
Not to the letter, and that's all you can do. But I think that can make some games quite difficult.
I guess normally it only affects you if you don't do your thing properly.
Exactly.
And that's the difference with co-ops, isn't it, I guess? So
but you win as a team and you lose as a team, and that's, the Star Wars Imperial Assault. You've got characters that can do everything. You can do everything that's the challenges that you have to do, but certain characters are suited better to do certain things.
Yeah.
and they will do it a lot quicker than if somebody else tries to do it. So, if you have to, you can do it, but it will take you quite a while. And there's that kind of element to it as well.
I played Unlock recently. I don't know if any of you've played Unlock. No. It's a deck of cards with different numbers on them, and essentially it's an escape room in a deck, basically. And you flip cards over and you look at what's on them and you try and work out what the puzzle is. And if you put the two cards together correctly, it will give you another number, or it might have another number like scribbled very slightly on the side of like something in there. And you go and, like an escape room, you go and find the different cards and all that kind of stuff. And I was playing it with someone I play with quite a lot, and I just got the funny feeling that they weren't invested in this one. We play co-ops a lot together, but you could just tell there wasn't that level of investment from them. They were enjoying the puzzle, but they were kind of like, well, we're on like our 9th or 10th puzzle of this deck now. Like, I'm not quite feeling it anymore. And I imagine that especially those kind of escape room games can feel a bit like, okay, like, have I really got to work out what this puzzle is yet again? And if you've got someone around the table that is like that with that kind of game, I think, it could end up with quite a just sort of like,
negative play experience.
Just let's let out all the air out of the room, sort of thing of just like a bit of a drudge sort of thing rather
fun
than
sponge.
Fun sponge. That's a good term. Mood hoover.
So do we think we have to win majority of the time on co-ops, or is it better if you don't?
Yeah, you always win.
I think if we had this experience with Descendant, which we talked about on the last podcast. We played it on medium difficulty, weren't really struggling, and the story is great, the game is great, but without that challenge, it wasn't as enjoyable. We put it to hard mode.
What a difference!
And it was ridiculously different. It was, and they don't mean harder as in all the enemies have
twice as many hit points. Whatever.
Yeah, it was like you have some of these enemies, and the enemies themselves present a different challenge.
Right. Okay.
So you have to approach them in a different way. So then you have to coordinate who's attacking which creature based on their weapon type, based on their range, things like this.
So it's more skill kind of level of increase, as in your skill.
Yeah, you can't just run in and smash everything. You have to plan what you're going to do, otherwise you get absolutely hammered, which we all did. Yeah. And it was just, it didn't make the game better, but it enhanced the experience around the table.
Yeah. I think with Mansions of Madness, I've probably won definitely less times.
Oh, for sure.
Than I've lost, and I think that just makes you want to do it again, doesn't it? Yeah. That makes you want to think, right? Well,
we don't play that game enough.
Yeah, and we played it. Me, Beck, and it was Chris. No, it wasn't. It was Curly. Me, you. Did we say it? We won, didn't we? We did it.
Yeah. Oh,
it was very good.
Yeah.
It was the train one, wasn't it?
The train. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
No, it was the serpent one.
Oh, the serpent one.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think it's you feel a real massive sense of achievement when you win that, because you know how absolutely
hard it is,
difficult it can be.
Is there a campaign mode in Mansions?
No.
Why on earth isn't there a campaign mode in Mansions?
So Lord of the Rings only has a campaign mode, and everyone is screaming out for one-shot missions. So I think it'd be great if you can get both in there, but I think certain games, especially like these FFG sort of sprawling games, quite often tend one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, Arkham Horror though, it has got a campaign, but you can just pick a random mission and do that mission. So there is precedent for it, I suppose.
Yeah, it's just, as I say, it seems to be for those kind of tabletop dungeon games that FFG put out, they do tend to stick towards. I think Imperial Assault is the most wide-reaching one they've had, because that had a versus mode.
Descent 2nd edition had to delve, which was a similar thing.
So, but yeah, it just seems interesting that like they tend to stick to just one type for this game.
I suppose if you've really written an intricate story that twists and turns, I guess you want people to experience that rather than just a random mission here that makes no sense.
Yeah.
So I kind of get that from a writer's perspective, but give people the option, right?
Well, you end up buying another game, don't you? So it's all happy for FFG. Where do we think it's... Oh, sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say on the easy to difficult thing, like my favourite game is one of the first I ever picked up as a co-op game is Ghost Stories. I think I mentioned it before. It's rated as one of the hardest co-op games to complete. I felt I've never beaten it. I think I beat it one on an app, which I didn't count as because it's a bit like... but I think that one of my greatest feelings of achievement was I took a new group and we sort of learnt the game quick enough and started learning things quick enough that we got to the boss And the fact that we just managed to get to the boss was enough that I was like, yes! Like, that's how difficult that game is. And yet, I've played with groups of kids around the table and all that lot. If they lost more than half the time, I think there'd be tears to had most of the time. And so it's that kind of thing of...
What did we play? Most Wanted and Marvel Champions. Did we play...
Jesus. The Guardians of the Galaxy
one. And
that's terrible.
Yeah, the last guy we just lost about 3 times. We need to win here. We need to play someone we can just beat easy.
We did. We went back and played.
And the next time we played it, we needed
the very
a win.
First enemy, just because we needed a win.
We defeat after about 3 times. It was like,
and we don't get to play that often. We were playing once a fortnight.
Yeah.
So if once a fortnight, you've done it 3. So it's basically taken us 6 weeks to try
to
and
just
beat
lose
this,
repeatedly,
and not lose like closely. We got absolutely obliterated.
Yeah. Once we had enough for 2 games, and once we killed so quickly the first time, let's try again.
And then we got obliterated again.
That's Ronan. It's just Ronan. He's just.
I think if you can kind of see the end, see that it can be done,
or see progress. This time I got to this.
Yeah.
The one complaint I do have about Marvel Champions is a couple of bad pulls out of the encounter deck in certain missions that they've built is just game over.
Yeah.
Like there's no to the villain schemes or whatever is just at that point. Like especially like Thanos that gets rid of half your deck halfway through the game. If you get to that point, just don't bother continue playing. You might as well just start again, and you can get just 2 cards back to back that gets you into that place. So I think one of my complaints on that is that there is that randomness. I think because you mentioned it earlier, I think most good co-op games have managed to get rid of that randomness, or at least made sure that it doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah.
Like I would say Marvel Champions, it doesn't happen a lot, but I have seen it a couple of times where it's just happened. And so, I think it's one of those where, there can be randomness that just kills the game. But for the most part, most co-ops now are at a point where you've lost the game gradually. Even if it's 2 or 3 wrong moves, you've lost it yourselves.
Do we think there's going to be any kind of massive stride forwards in co-op games? I guess you've got the addition of things with apps now, which is a massive difference. I guess for the setting up, like you mentioned in the last episode, the setting up of and stuff of a lot of these games is very complicated.
I can set Descent up and pack it away in about 10 minutes. Considering how much there is, the apps just made it so much easier.
Do we think there'll be any more like new inventions, or can we see?
I'd be quite interested to see the Frosthaven mechanic when that comes out. What they've done to it, because I know it's basically the core elements, but they've added things like town element, so like Davey said, if you fail a mission but you get something from the town, it's not as bad.
You still achieve something,
as just so those sort of things. But with regard to the advancements, who knows? I'm very much looking forward to finding out.
having seen where co-ops come from since Pandemic released, which was over 10 years ago now, and see the difference we've had in co-op since then, I think it's fair to say that there's going to be something big. I can tell you what it's going to be, because I'm not a rules writer or anything like that, or in the industry in that sense, but I can't not see there being some crazy, say apps like XCOM. U-Boot has an app where you look through the binoculars for the signs of like ships and stuff like that, and like you've got those kind of things for the apps, and as you say, for setup, and like Imperial Assault removing the one versus many aspect and making it pure co-op. You've got all of those kind of bits, and even say from the fact of, if you look at the ability for game designers to remove the ability to quarterback from games through little clever hidden mechanics where only you know certain things, or only you can have the opportunity to do certain things, which puts the power back in your hands. We've already seen in just 10 years or 20 years or whatever it is since like Pandemic, and that really were making a big sort of come back on the scene, or come back but launch on the scene. I think we can only imagine what 10-15 years is going to look like still for co-op games. I think it's going to be massively different from where we are now.
I think the thing is, they're not going anywhere. That's the point, is that they've been around for a very long time, and they're not going away. So they're going to have to advance certain elements of those games. But I think that will happen on every game, whether it's co-op or not.
All games have seen a massive step
holographic
forward.
Tables where there are no setup and the board is just there.
Well, I remember seeing a gaming table which this is Warhammer 40k related, but literally someone pushed the top of their model, so it put pressure on the model, and the sensor underneath worked out, and then they tapped the top of another model and it did all the dice rolls for them. worked out what range it was, whether it was long range, short range, all the modifiers and all that kind of stuff. Did the dice roll for them. Did a nice little pow 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 on the sort of screen that's under the table.
Wow.
And then did all of that. I mean,
that is living in Star Trek, isn't it?
It is crazy. It is. I mean, I can't think of who is it. Come On, that does Zombicide. They launched it. Didn't really launch properly. It was a bit of I think it was a bit dead on release, unfortunately, from what I've seen. But they did a map that you'd put under like your Zombicide game, and it would talk to you and play through as you were going through different rooms. You wouldn't have to click an app or anything. It would kind of tell you where you were going and describe rooms to you and all sorts.
Wow.
But again, it was like, oh, you'll need to buy like a chip or something that costs you £15 on top of this £300 kit that goes with your £400 game. And so I think it kind of, at this point, that's where we're at for that kind of, if it can't be put on an app at the moment, I think it's too much for a board game. But
who knows in the future?
Who knows in the future?
Sounds like we've got a lot of stuff to look forward to in the future then, maybe.
Hope so.
So, on to our question time. So to let James Davey, the previous first player, know that his presence is still felt, we will ask one of his questions. And it is, what is your desert island game and why? So I'm going to assume that you've either been marooned on the island with a group of like-minded people, or you've gone slowly mad and have started to paint faces on things like the coconuts and decided that they're sentient now and they're going to be your other players.
And you're screaming you're evil at every single one
Yeah,
of them.
absolutely.
You're the traitor! I know you're the traitor!
I guess you could pick solo games if you wanted to, and maybe T, that might be one of that you might pick, because I know that you quite like your solo games. So what are we all picking?
Depends if we've got power on this desert island.
I'm going to say, yes, I am the benevolent god of I am the spirit of the spirit island. We have got power. If you need an
And a
app,
recharging point.
if you need an app, you can have one.
Or
but
your Descent is now only a five episode version of Descent.
For me, it'd be Descent. Absolutely. There's enough content in there to see me through for a little while. So, yeah, Descent. Maybe even the second edition for me. Because you've got a lot more choice. With characters, with enemies, with campaigns.
Okay.
But yeah, that would be it for me. I play it solo with the app anyway. So
So you got 2 for 1 there. You can play with your little
exactly.
Wilson buddies,
Yeah.
or you can play on your own.
And shouting at them for doing the wrong thing.
So Descent for you then.
Descent for me.
Adrian, what are you going to go for?
No, because I would say Pandemic, but again, I would be playing all 4 coconuts in that respect.
Well, you can be marooned with a group of people, a group of board gamers. That's allowed to. So if it has to have interaction with people, that's fine.
So it's more like a plane crash
Well,
than a maroon.
We're in Lost.
Yes.
yeah, all right.
After we've run away from the polar bears.
Yeah.
I found a recharge, a USB.
We found
We're
Dharma
good.
or whatever
As
it
long
was.
as you do 4, 8, 12, 13, whatever the numbers were, then you can charge up your app.
Yeah,
That's
fine.
what happens in that episode of Lost.
It's a game within a game.
And the escape room sort of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, perfect.
I would probably just call back to a classic and just do Carcassonne. Like,
Wow, retro
It-
classic.
It is, and I didn't play it for a long time. I just happened to be that I think HMV was doing like some pseudo closing down sale, and happened to pick it up there. And it's just so simple, and like the version I got came with a few expansions. You can mix them in; it gives you a slightly different play experience, but it's nice and simple. You can play it very sort of nice and relaxed, or you can play it where if you put a tile a certain way, there's no way if that person can close off their city and really like screw them over in that respect and stuff like that. And so depending upon which lot of you marooned people on this island you've got to get together for the board game, then you could have a different version of the game. And yeah, it just plays quick. I mean, might need a bit of a table or some kind of set of logs that we've chopped down.
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that.
I mean, if we do a gaming table, do we get it so you can lift the top up? So you can keep the game nice underneath, and then you put your bamboo reeds back on the top, and then you can eat dinner then.
As long as you don't put your cup on the top of the bamboo reeds, because we're not.
True.
Yeah. That's interesting. So you've gone for different moods to suit, and Rob, you've gone for different variation.
Yeah.
You've gone for something that is going to be different every time. You've got for something that you can
Versatile.
choose. Yeah,
Plays different.
Yeah.
Versatile. Yeah,
Tambo, what
It'll
about
have to
you?
be Marvel Champions. I think. Because if you're removed for 4 people, you've got nothing else to do, so 4-player count wouldn't matter, would it? Surely.
There's no way you got your entire Marvel champions in the overhead storage space of this plane. I'll be honest. But
always make room. Yeah.
Private jet,
of course.
It's a private jet. Yeah. And then if you start losing people because they're dying or you have to eat them or something, it's good at solo play as well.
It is good at solo play as well. You are correct. Yeah.
So I love playing it solo. So you've got your own game. So
Yeah. Do you know what? I did that wrong.
yeah, exactly right. You got
For me, I'm going to go for Terraforming Mars. Similar to you, just because it's just so varied every single time. Really, mate.
Well, to be fair, if you're stranded in a desert island, the game takes like 4 hours and feels like it's going on too long. So it might make the
There's nothing else going. You've got nothing else to do. So
You've got nothing to do. You can just sit there and build an engine that should happen in an hour and takes 4 hours to build.
And it might give you some ideas to terraform the island.
There we go.
Not,
Educational.
Exactly.
I'm so sorry. I thought we were on the co-op part, so I thought we had to be a co-op game. We have to be so anything to Terraform Mars is a good shout.
Okay, well, I'll play Terraforming Mars with you when we're marooned on the island.
It's not that bad.
I love it. I blow hot and cold with it again. The amount of hours I've spent on it, I feel like I should be better, but I think it's just so...
Is that every board game?
Yeah, that's just how I feel.
I'm exactly the same.
Yeah. I just, depending on that startup hand, and that's where I realised that that is where I make the biggest mistakes, is picking dodgy, making bad choices at the start. But depending on what corpse you've got and what prelude cards you've got and the actual 10 cards in your hand, your game will just be utterly different every time. And I just love that about it. And we're obviously going to go for the big box special one with the nice cubes, because they're very...
Are you bringing your 3D printer to
well, I mean, maybe. Yeah, that'd be good. We could get some nice little hexy, 3D...
I think we have done it wrong there, because you could bring a 3D printer and play loads of different games if you knew the rules.
That's gaming.
And if you're on your own, you can print people to play with.
It's true.
Surely you could maybe just start building a ship as well, very slowly. Get some ship to get out there.
Well, if you've only got PLA, it'll eventually melt.
That's true.
Okay, fair one.
I like how we've all chosen something different there. So we're going to have different desert island experiences, aren't we? So now it's time for the penultimate turn. What are the things we're all looking forward to? Gaming or non-gaming related? Anyone got anything particularly springing to mind?
Me and T have got... I'm very excited to play this game again.
Outer Rim.
Star Wars Outer Rim. Loved it. The first time I played it, I didn't care that T had it. I went and was pricing it up. I was going to buy this game. It's so goddamn good. It's combative when it has to be, but you can play the entire game without ever having a fight with another player. The thematic is brilliantly done in the Star Wars universe, and I absolutely love it. So we're playing that Friday night, I believe.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, me, Chris, and Chris, isn't it?
And I cannot wait.
Nice.
Have you played it?
No. It was one of those where
good.
I got warned off by a sort of load of mixed reviews when it first came out. And then saw the expansion come out, and it's sort of, I don't know, maybe the people who just weren't sold on it the first time were just obviously being quiet about it, and the people who enjoyed it all the way through sort of were still talking about it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to give this a go now.
If you're a Star Wars... It doesn't matter if you're not a Star Wars fan.
But if you are.
If you are a Star Wars fan...
It's better, isn't it?
It's fan. The characters, even the ships. We got there and T was showing me the ships, and I was like, oh, they've got the Ghost.
Yeah,
from Star Wars Rebels, and it's so thematically on point that if you enjoy Star Wars, you will love it. If you don't enjoy Star Wars, the game is fantastic.
Yeah. You don't need to be invested in the IP.
No, and you're not an all-powerful Jedi. You are a smuggler. You are a bounty hunter, and it's that element of it. You're trying to
get famous.
Yeah, basically.
Big fame.
And it's brilliant. Loved it. Loved every second of it. And the new expansion just brings an element to it that kind of tweaks, I think, what most people didn't like about the game. And just completely nullifies all their points.
Yeah, I've heard good things about the expansion.
So yeah, can't wait for that on Friday. Yeah.
Adrian, how about you? What are you?
Yeah,
the pipeline.
Nothing, strangely. I think the next game day I currently have booked is in October.
Wow.
But that's not to say I won't play games. That's just I haven't got anything booked in the diary at the moment. But I will absolutely get to more games before then, for sure. So what I'll talk about is I had a taster to a Kickstarter that's arriving. So I've got the War Room coming. I think I've mentioned this a few times. It's basically Axis and Allies, but sort of on a grander scale. There's more to it and all this kind of stuff.
You taking this with the paddles?
Yes,
we were talking about it.
Yes. So long story short is it's produced in China, as most board games are. Because it's set in World War II and has the original Chinese flag in it, they won't print the flags to go on the to do the original official original World War II flags. So they print it in America, the flags that go on the board on stickers, and they've sent that out first, and then the rest of the game is coming later. So this morning I received my China stickers for the Chinese nations, and then some point in the next sort of hopefully a month, according to the last update, I will get the War Room. So there you go. I'm looking forward to that. I think it will be good. It's probably going to be a while till I get to the table because again, it's like an 8-hour sort of
like a Twilight Imperium
World War II sort of slog it out. If anyone's played Axis and Allies, I don't think I've seen a game of that go under 6 hours without one side just completely steamrollering the other. It's going to be a big old beast of a game. I will get it to the table at some point, but for now I'm just looking forward to getting it and getting to open it all. And so when I received this little pack of stickers, I was just like, oh, these are fun. It reminded me that the rest of the game is on the way. So.
Nice, little teaser.
That's what I said.
Teaser trailer.
You don't normally get that, do you? Normally, turns up 2 years late and you kind of go, oh, cool, I forgot about this. Yeah. But no, I got a little sort of teaser package through the post of it's on its way.
Are you tempted to put little Chinese flags on things around the house?
No, because I've not got enough stickers then. They literally give you just enough stickers to do everything.
That sounds like a lot of pressure.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, most of them are square or circular. It's not like when I did the Great Wall, where the archers had their arms sticking along the little wooden arm on the meeple, and then you had the bow that you had to kind of line up as well. And I was
wow.
I was literally there sweating with tweezers, being like, right, okay, I think I've got this in the right place. You'd stick it down and then be like, nope, okay, get the tweezers, pull it back off again and try again.
That's the only part I found stressful about Lego.
Yeah.
Trying to put the damn stickers on straight.
The number of times I've got a little bit of lint or whatever stuck behind one of those stickers, and it doesn't matter where you are in the room, you can see it on your Lego kit because you know it's there. Anyway, different geeky side, but
yeah, sorry about that.
It is that kind of pressure that you can feel on it.
That would stress me out.
T, what are you looking forward to?
Well, I'm also looking for Friday night. I've got Perseverance, second episode tomorrow with JP and Curly. Really enjoying it. It's definitely a mind clash. It's actually mind explodes. And then with this extra campaign mode going on, there's another section to think about, which just again, it's you enjoyed the first episode, didn't you? Ish.
I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I did enjoy it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's
my
campaign.
My brain hurts.
It'll give it a whole new.
My big Euros aren't my thing. That's where I found out that big Euros aren't my thing.
I really enjoyed them. I'm not very good at them, but I enjoyed them.
So is it episode 1 twice, then episode 2 twice, or is it episode 1, episode 2, episode 1, episode 2?
Sorry, I'm not saying it's episode. No, it's episode 1 twice. It's the second part of the Chronicles. Yeah. It's not episode 2 yet. It's the second part of the campaign.
Just wondered how they'd structured that.
Well, it is actually the third time playing because JP actually mucked up our first turn, which is brilliant.
Okay.
So glad he did because we were playing it 3-player on a 4-player side board, and absolutely messed everything out. And Curly and JP absolutely rinsed it, and I was left way behind. And I was really grumpy. I was like, I'm not going to do. I've played 4 more games of this, and I'm just so far behind already. And then I came in on the next one, and JP went, I've mucked up. And I went, what? We played it wrong side of the board. And then, as a mutual decision, I was well up for playing again. But it was a mutual decision that we played it again, and it's much better because we're now all quite evenly close, which is quite good. Otherwise, I'm so glad.
It suited you better.
Oh god, yeah. I think I would have struggled to get through those 4 games if I was falling. So you go behind so far once. And I was on 3 glory, and they were on 12 and 13 in one game.
That's the thing with Legacy, isn't it? If you start on a bit of a downer, you know that you've got another however many weeks to have to, stomp through it.
It's quite ironic because JP was over my game that I had in the first game because he was not doing too well, but then he ended up winning the actual episode and actually got him back up. So
that's good.
Yeah, it was really good and it was all close. So looking forward to that. I'm really enjoying it now. So.
Cool. So I'm looking forward to eventually playing Zuuli. So this came about because I was listening to the last episode with JP and Adam Richards from punchboard.co.uk, and as soon as he mentioned Zuuli, my little ears pricked right up, and then JP was then saying, I think Becky's going to like this, and I thought, JP, you're not wrong, mate.
He didn't say you were going to like it. He said you were already ordering it.
I mean...
And it turns out he was right.
Yes. So when I googled it and saw the box, I remembered seeing it at the UKGE, I think. And
The one game you didn't buy?
Well, there's got to be one, isn't there? Come on. And I was put off a bit, to be honest, by the very lovely but quite childlike artwork. And I guess I assumed it was just for kids. I mean, the artwork is beautiful, but it's the kind of pictures you'd imagine seeing on a little person's pyjamas or something, you know, like a little lion that's cartoonish. It's very beautiful, but it is quite childlike. But then when Adam described it as like Ark Nova without the fuss or something like that, and I was like, yeah, I want to give that a go. I want to give that a go. And he'd just been, you know, telling me exactly how he felt about Spirit Island, and I was like, this guy, I'm on a level with this guy. I know exactly what he means because I felt exactly the same. And I thought, well, if he's saying Zuuli's good, then I'm doing it.
You are a salesman's dream.
I know. Yep.
The number of times I've said to you, you can borrow this game if you want to, and then like, don't worry about it, I've ordered it.
I don't like borrowing people's stuff because I'm worried that I might break it because I am incredibly clumsy. So I feel the pressure when I'm playing with someone else's stuff, and also I don't like having to be beholden to someone else for when I want to do a thing.
Right,
so
okay.
You know, not that I'm sure you would be happy to lend something out whenever, but if I decide at 3 a.m. I really want to play Bandido with my friend, I don't want to have to knock at your front door and get it. So yeah, no, exactly. Curly did take some persuading because I showed him a picture and he was like, oh, his little and I was like, you just said on a previous podcast that you weren't snobbish about games, so
let me tell you, 1 hour and 3 minutes on episode whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Because I do the transcripts, I know he said that because it was typed. So there we go. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Unfortunately, I mean, it should have already been in my hot little hand, but I don't know what the postal service is doing.
Striking.
Well, not today. It should have arrived on Monday.
They strike last week?
Yeah, I got my delivery today.
And stuff arrived, but that did not arrive.
Well,
there we are. I'm fine with strikes.
It's not like you haven't got enough to get you through a
That's
couple of days.
not the point.
You're going to be okay.
That's not the point. I did also buy Anomia and Bandido.
It keeps going on.
But they were like £7.
Do you need to speak to somebody about your board
There's
game?
a Facebook group about addicts for buying board games, and I think you can recommend that people join it. So I'm like,
well, they were like I say, Anomia was £7 or something, and
But when Curly's telling you to slow down,
well,
that's quite an
doesn't
endorsement.
mean I have to listen to him, does it? my justification is, and I've always got one, so that's good. Is at work at the minute we're having to do a lot more night shifts, and things like Cockroach Poker, Bandido, Anomia are going to be amazing for night shifts at 2 a.m. That is my rationale.
Fair enough.
That is my excuse, and I'm sticking to it.
That's a good one.
I mean, I'm not sure how much I believe you, but
Well,
I mean, it's fair enough.
There we go.
That's your justification.
Yep. So it comes round to the final turn. Like the end of most good games, the final turn is upon us, and because it's a co-op, there aren't any victory points to award, and we didn't work out who the hidden traitor was, but we want to thank you all for listening anyway. If you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe and review on your podcast player of choice, and send us your questions to answer on a future episode. You can contact us by sending us an email to players@whoseturn.co.uk, or you can go to our Facebook page, Whose Turn Is It Anyway Podcast. Our Instagram is @WhoseTurnPodcast, and TikTok is @WhoseTurnIsItAnyway. We'll be back again in 2 weeks with another episode, so until then, whose turn is it?